Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to San Diego Comic-Con. It is day one, and already the energy is around this place is just out of control. It is wild. There are so many costumes, so many people. Great. Yeah, and you're alive and you're here. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Robert Kirkman joining us.
Hello.
For this hour brought to you by Stubborn Soda. It's good to be stubborn, just
it is.
Like this guy, right?
Very nice.
That's good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
San Diego Comic-Con day one. You always have a lot of things going on. I asked you, but this is kind of the kickoff of everything, you're crazy.
This is my first interview of the con, so I am absolutely terrified that you're going to ask me something that I have forgotten about, because there's so much going on this week.
Just full disclosure,
I'm like, what season is what show on, and what's okay? We got Telltale doing yeah, I know what that is. It's going to be great.
For full disclosure then, I'm going to say, I asked you if there is anything you didn't want to talk about. You said no everything, so.
You know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about Iron Banner on Destiny being this week. Why is it this week?
That's
what
right.
is happening?
You've been playing.
What is happening to me?
Because
I'm
you want to be
almost at
playing.
335. I got a couple more steps to go. Each Iron Banner gets me a little bit closer. It's making me angry.
That I think the last time we talked, you said that was sort of like your game of choice.
I'm still in it.
Yeah?
Yeah, me and my son like to play it together. It's a lot of fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, God, I mean, where do we even start? We're here at San Diego Comic-Con. You've got a lot of projects that you're working on that have just recently been announced. We're going to try to go over all those things. But, you know, like most people would probably say, oh, I know Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead. And, of course, that's expanded out. But I think people would just like to hear, like, how did you get into all of this? What is the short form story of Robert Kirkman becoming a creator?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to do comics. I grew up reading comics. I worked in a comic shop shortly after I graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I just kind of immersed myself in that world. And I learned at the comic shop how comics get into a store, you know, how they're distributed and things like that. And from there, I just was like, okay, well, how do you make them?
Let's figure that out.
So I started writing stories and working with a bunch of buddies that I went to school with, and just started making comics, started my own publishing company, did a book called Battle Pope that was ridiculous.
Right.
Did okay, but that ended up leading to me doing more and more stuff, and eventually through Battle Pope, I befriended Eric Larson, who is a partner at Image Comics, and he liked my stuff and allowed me to do a Super Patriot book, which allowed me to then do Tech Jacket Invincible in a book called The Walking Dead, because I had kind of got a shoe in with, or a foot in the door. The shoe had a foot in it, I need to say.
Both work.
Whatever. First interview. But that seemed to work out well, and then I started doing the comics there, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger until somebody wanted to turn it into a TV show, and then that happened. And
all right, now this is TMI now. I want to rewind just a little bit. What were your go-tos in comics when you said you were in the comic? Like, what were your go-tos?
Well, I loved Marvel Comics, so huge fan of Spider-Man, love the superhero stuff. In high school, I started getting into more independent stuff, like Grindel, Minimum Wage. Was a huge fan of Image Comics, and so that the self-starters really inspired me. The people that set out on their own, did their own stories, produced their own comics, weren't working with a corporation, were doing their own thing, blazing their own trail. That's the stuff that really inspired me, that made me want to do that kind of stuff.
Stray Bullets?
Stray Bullets, great, yeah, David Lapham.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
That kind of sort of shows in what Skybound is, right?
Yes.
In terms of like really celebrating the creators and giving that independent voice. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Because that you mentioned you got to The Walking Dead, and
The Walking Dead has become very successful, and I feel that a lot of that success is due to the fact that I have been fortunate enough to be involved every step of the way. We've been able to maneuver it somehow that I'm an executive producer on the show, I'm in the writer's room, I'm making casting decisions, I'm a big part of what goes on behind the scenes. Same with video game, definitely with the comic book, and all of the different aspects of the Walking Dead universe. And so I feel that if you involve the creator every step of the way as these things move through multimedia platforms and go into different areas of the entertainment world, it makes for a better product. And so Skybound is built on the idea of, let's make these great comics, but if anything happens with them outside of comics, and we do things that aren't comics, like Super Fight.
Yeah.
You know, Darren Ross, who created Super Fight, he's the guy that's in the commercial that we make for Super Fight. He's the guy that's hosting the show that we make for Super Fight. And by having him at the center of it all, we can make sure that you get an authentic Super Fight experience out of playing the game, watching the show, playing the video game that just launched, I think, yesterday. I'm going to plug that. Yeah. You know, he's at the very center of this world, and that's, you know, that's the Skybound way.
I mean, you also like support other creators that are similar to you, or that are looking to have that independent voice to be able to, you know, create these new stories. And additionally to that, like Skybound has supported them even beyond comics. And I think that's really interesting. But how like important is it to you for the creators that are a part of Skybound?
I mean, it's the most important thing. You know, we are nothing without the creators. The content doesn't get made without the content creators. So, you know, that's why we make them the absolute center of it all. That's why when I find someone like Chris Dingus, who, you know, is this amazing television writer that wants to do comics, the only thing I do is try and help him figure out how to take his talents and apply them to this new medium that he's working in. As far as giving him notes, steering his story, trying to guide it into something that appeals to me more, or something that makes sense to me more, is not something that I do. I want to be as hands-off as possible after giving him the tools to succeed. So that's what we do.
I mean, we've seen in the past, like, the attempt to cross over from one medium to the next. And one thing I'm consistently impressed with Skybound is just sort of the transmedia approach. And you are certainly getting a lot of experience along with a lot of other folks in terms of like being able to tell these stories from one and then shift and craft them. Is that also, that seems to be a part of it, like how do you help a television writer like kind of craft a story a little bit differently for comic book panels and then maybe a little bit differently for a game? Or
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot by going from the Walking Dead comic to the Walking Dead television show and seeing how different things work, and it was a huge learning experience for me on Walking Dead seasons 1 and 2 to see how a writer's room works and see how script writing in the television medium is much different than script writing in the comic book medium, and being able to cut my teeth on that show has allowed me to, you know, have a certain level of experience when it comes to helping, you know, somebody move the opposite way from television into comics, or helping someone else in comics start to develop their IP as a television show. You know, it's been a lot of fun.
Which is like really interesting because Outcast, of course, is premiered a few Fridays ago. I think there's 4, maybe 5 episodes, 5th episode tomorrow, maybe, or 6? I might be one behind.
7th episode. I don't keep track.
And one thing that really blew me away about Outcast was by about 15 minutes into the premiere of the first episode, I had actually pulled out issue 1 because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is like a panel for panel representation, and it not exactly, but really close. And to me, that was like really fascinating to see. And of course, we see the deviances. But in that particular instance, is that, you know, compared to like The Walking Dead, which is like, you know, we've got like 2 almost totally different properties. Whereas Outcast really has a lot more parallels with the comic.
Yeah.
So was that intentional for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a product of the comic book and the TV show happening at a much closer rate, because that kind of stuff was, I think, a little bit more on my mind, and it wasn't so far in my rearview mirror that I wanted to change things a lot.
Right.
But also, you know, it was a great exercise in, it is very similar, and there's, you know, a lot that is almost word for word, you know, the comic book that makes it into the TV show, but seeing the way the scenes work out, seeing the way, you know, dialogue takes up different amounts of time in both mediums, and seeing how story flows in the show versus the comic, and being able to watch those stories that are both so close are fundamentally different in a lot of really intriguing ways. Was, again, just an eye-opening experience for me, seeing the kind of things you can push in the show version that won't work in the comic version, the way that you can play with sound and motion and things like that, and tell the exact same story in 2 pretty unique ways, was a lot of fun.
So I guess let's rewind one more time and go back to The Walking Dead, because in relation to Outcast, like you said, we had a lot closer time
Yes.
between the comics, and I think I remember reading, even when the first season came out, your discussions about how when The Walking Dead comic first launched, didn't know that it was going to be the success that it was, so you had kind of an accelerated first 6 issues, and you made comments about how you didn't want to kill Shane off as quickly as you did in the comic, not realizing.
Yeah.
So in that regards, you said it was like a learning process for you, but it also gave you the liberty of going, I'd like to expand this character out, which I definitely see a lot of in Outcast, like characters that maybe are just this in the comic, but they are much more expanded in Outcast. So you have that sort of flexibility and freedom to be able to say, I really want to expand more into the backstory of this character or make this character more in the spotlight.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm noticing that comic books are a little bit more like punk rock in that you have like a very intense, brief experience with the story, and a lot of things burn page count very easily, so you have to be very succinct with the way that you tell the story, with the way that you portray the characters. And where comic books are punk rock, you've got orchestra music with television, where you can just kind of roll into different things and then dive deep into different characters, and you can do so much more in a 45 minutes of a television show than you can in 20 pages of a comic.
Right.
And so it's been great to be able to say, okay, like Chief Giles is a very important character in the comic books, but not a lot's really even done with him until some of the more recent issues. He's there and he's present and he's important and he does some things, but we don't really get into his backstory. We don't really see his wife for a good long time. But when it comes to the television show, he's ever present and he's got side stories, and we just dive deep into his character and who he is and what's going on. And Reggie Caffey playing him, absolutely amazing. But being able to take those 2-page sequences in the comics and expand them into 15 minutes in the show allows for us to go, a lot deeper into this stuff in really cool ways.
Do you find, say writing, this next issue of Walking Dead or the Outcast or anything, do you find yourself going, oh, this is gonna, I could see this working out like this on TV, or do you find that coming a lot more into your thought process?
It happens a lot now, and in Outcast especially, there are things that I'll write and I'll say, I can touch on this, and this here, but these other 2 things I'll have to tell the writer's room on the show, oh, we can also do this and this on the show. And so there are things that would be left on the cutting room floor in the comic that I'm able to add to the television show, which is, kind of cool that the stuff's just not going to get wasted,
Right.
So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, I do in particular scenes, you can kind of see how something's going to expand or something's going to change, or, you can do this extra beat in this fight because, you actually have people moving and things like that. It's a lot of fun.
As far as The Walking Dead is concerned, we mentioned it earlier, games, television show, another television show, comic book. For you, a lot of a big world, it gets added to every day. You said you like to be involved. How do you feel about where The Walking Dead is at right now? I mean, I assume, did you think when you saw the first success that it would,
No, definitely not. I mean, it's bizarre. I have no idea where it's going to go next. It seems to keep growing, which is really strange. But I mean, it's extremely gratifying. I mean, Charlie Adlard and I are still working on the comic month in and month out, and for the 2 of us to be, watching this thing grow into this huge thing that just keeps getting weirder and bigger and crazier. I could break down on the side of the road and walk to a casino to get a glass of water and bump into a Walking Dead slot machine that I didn't even know existed. These are the kind of things that can happen in my life now. So it's very weird. It's very weird.
Yeah.
But totally awesome. 'Cause
Yeah.
I got kids. They're probably going to want to go to college. So
it helps out in that regard. I mean,
stuff's expensive.
Is it? Do you find it becoming increasingly difficult to keep up with the expanded universe and where to go?
A little bit. I mean, I'm pretty good at time management, but one of the things that I've been very proud of is the fact that every step of the way, we find really great teams. I work with Telltale on the games, but they are doing the bulk of that. Like, I'm not, day to day writing those stories and having, being able to select teams to expand the universe in really great ways and adding a new voice to it in most cases is also very cool. And so in that respect, it's not completely unmanageable, but I'll hit a breaking point eventually, don't worry.
Outcast has been wildly successful too. Seeing the numbers, hearing people talk about it, big hit with Cinemax. Definitely a different type of topic, right?
Sure.
Demonic possession, maybe, we don't know. We're still kind of figuring it out. We're still taking that journey. But again, another, I don't want to say taboo subject, but certainly a more mature and interesting
I say
controversy.
interesting, yeah.
Interesting works
Sure.
for me. Again, surprised at all by the adoption of viewers, of being like, yeah, this is right up my alley.
Well, I knew it would. I knew it would appeal to people that were already fans of that genre. The exorcism genre is extremely popular and has people that have been supporting movies for decades. Much the same way that the zombie genre had people supporting it for decades. So, I knew that there was, to a certain extent, a built-in fan base, but you don't know, how they're going to feel about it, because we are, to a certain extent, pushing the boundaries of that genre. We are turning things on their ear a little bit and stripping away certain things that might have made it popular and replacing them with other things that people may or may not like. We're trying to do something a little bit different. But it's great to know that people seem to be digging it, and they want to know what's going on, and I can't wait to tell them.
Awesome. Yes, a lot of people still asking those questions. Let's talk a little bit about, before we talk about some of the other things, let's talk a little bit about Invincible. We've got sort of a new story that's coming out of Invincible. A lot of things have changed, but this has always been one of your favorite properties to work on?
Yeah, I love Invincible. I mean, it's everything I've ever wanted out of a superhero comic, like put into one book. It's I'm a big fan of that genre. I love Marvel Comics, love DC Comics, but at the same time, I armchair quarterback the hell out of that stuff, and I should have done it this way, and I should have done that. And why don't they try this? And why doesn't anybody ever do this? And Invincible's the book where we get to do that.
Did you
awesome.
put yourself to task, or was someone else like, come on, Rob, if you really think you can do it better, why don't you go ahead?
No, I mean, it was something that Corey Walker, the co-creator, and I, had this opportunity to do a book as part of Image's new initiative to do more superhero books. Back in 2002, they had decided to do this, and it was like, oh, well, if we create a superhero book, we might be able to be a part of this. We were very young, and it was early in our career, and we were trying to, get our foot in the door, as I said before. And so, we actually got to sit down and try and craft like what we thought would be the coolest superhero and the coolest superhero universe. And so it was a fun intellectual exercise to sit down as two, superhero fans.
Right.
And Ryan Otley came in on issue 8 and has been a big part of that process moving forward. And it's just been a lot of fun sitting around as fans trying to go, you know how superhero books always do this? Well, we're going to do it this way. There's so many opportunities to do that. It's a lot of fun.
I actually have a question about Invincible that I've been wanting to ask for like 10 years. Invincible has, are you ready? So Invincible's had always sort of had fun little cameos from other Image comics, all over. And there's this one frame during an early issue.
Hopefully I remember this.
In which a different version of Kristen Walker and Dina Pilgrim are like, they're there, they exist, but it's not the same versions of.
Yeah.
What is?
I think they have different skin tones, and Dina Pilgrim has a robot arm.
Robot arm, yes.
And Walker has an eye patch.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember what issue that was in, but I had asked Brian Bendis to guest star in Invincible because we were doing a thing where we went to went to comic book conventions and stuff, and he said no. But he had Warren Ellis appear in Powers, and so I was like, oh, that'll be cool.
Right, does the
And then he
ride-along.
later did it with Nailbiter. He actually allowed Josh Williamson to have him appear in Nailbiter because he likes Josh Williamson more than he ever liked me, which I'm fine with. But I think I did that to mess with him because he said no. So I was like, well, I'll just put Walker and Pilgrim in this panel that's not Walker and Pilgrim. So
All right,
there you go.
It's finally been answered. It's been a long time. So a lot of folks were asking, if you're not caught up on Invincible, a lot has certainly been happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so can you talk to us a little bit about sort of like what has recently happened and like why, and are you excited about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're having a lot of fun with it. Corey Walker, the original co-creator of the book,
Right.
came in and he's doing a 6-issue run that is picking up in the aftermath of the reboot storyline. And what
Right.
happened in the reboot storyline, just to spoil it for people that may not have read it, is that Invincible got pulled into a version of the past and had his little adventure. I won't spoil the exact storyline there. And at the resolution of that story, he went back to his own timeline.
Right.
And when he arrived, 5 years had passed. And when he left, he was raising his infant daughter with Adam Eve. And when he returned, he found his daughter was now 6 years old. And so he's missed 5 years of her life. He's missed 5 years of Eve's life. The entire world has moved 5 years without him. And so this storyline is really about him getting to know his daughter again and getting to know, what the status quo of all of his family and his parents and the villains and what's going on Earth, because they had recently left Earth because a villain had taken over.
Right.
Because I read a lot of superhero comics and the villain always loses. Right. And so in Invincible, the villain won and our superhero just left the planet, as you can do. And so Earth is run by this diabolical evil dude, and so that's going to come into play eventually later. And and it's just a fun story arc to kind of reset what's been going on in the book for a massive, huge 12-part storyline that's going to start when Ryan Otley comes back in November with issue 133. And we'll be talking about that arc a little bit more later, but there's going to be a lot of huge stuff that goes down in that.
I have to imagine from like a fan's perspective, you guys did a lot with sort of parallel, alternate universe and cool time travel so well that like, I felt like, oh, this is going to be like normal for fans, right? Did you kind of feel at that point you'd sort of condition? I mean, I think you guys handle the alternate dimensions and time travels like better than anything else I've ever,
Well, we try to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, that's one thing. And I also try to play up the absurdity of those situations as much as possible.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we've definitely primed the audience, I think, after 125 issues to recognize that the status quo is never going to remain stagnant and Mark's life is never going to be easy.
Yeah.
I get a lot of letters where they're like, can you just give the guy a break? And it's like, no, I can't give the guy a break because if I do that, the book will be boring. It'll be 6 issues of, Mark and his family went to the ice cream shop and they got cones. And their daughter dropped the ice cream and she got upset. They had to go back in and buy her another ice cream cone. No one's reading that issue. So,
Maybe one or two
if the little girl gets her leg ripped off, that's drama.
Right.
People want to know what happened there.
People want to know.
So yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some other things that are upcoming.
Okay.
I'm excited just to, I mean, in celebration of Stubborn Soda, I've seen you be very stubborn with your fans many times. I know Dan loves to tell a story about you going out and who's your favorite character? All right, well, I'm going to kill him. That's just kind of having fun. You have a
That's
unique
how we do
relationship.
things. That's how we do things.
And in regards to that, you've got the season 7 Walking Dead trailer that's hitting tomorrow at 4:30.
Where in the trailer we reveal who was killed by Negan.
You're
that
such
is
a
not
liar.
true at all.
Yeah.
Nope.
No one would believe that in a million years.
No, but I will say, in the trailer we do reveal all of the awesome stuff that is coming in season 7 that is not related to that moment.
Of course.
People are not thinking about because they are currently distracted with that moment.
Right.
This trailer will be that scene is just the beginning.
Right.
And holy crap, all this other stuff is coming next. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I mean, I've always seen you have fun with your fans. Like
I feel like it's all in good fun. We love each other. I mean, I appreciate everything that they do supporting me, and I'm just trying to entertain everybody.
Yeah,
and again, if those characters stopped dying, we'd all get bored very quickly.
I feel like I have seen more passion and emotion from fans in regards to the season 6 finale than any time ever.
Yes.
And to you, does that mean like, oh, we did our job, we did a great job? Like,
yeah,
people
to
are
a
mad
certain
at it.
extent.
They want,
Yeah, no, look, if you're mad about the cliffhanger, we hear you, we understand. We don't apologize. We did it because we wanted to do it, and that's great and everything. But, people were upset about it. A lot of people were upset about it. A lot of people weren't. But, yeah, when you get that reaction, whether it's good or bad, positive or negative, the fact that reaction exists is reassuring. People are invested. And as, we've been doing this for 6 years now, We're going to push that envelope. We're going to try new things.
Of course.
That doesn't mean that because we ended season 6 with a cliffhanger, every episode of season 7 is going to end in a cliffhanger, and season 7 is going to end in a cliffhanger, and that's not the status quo now. We're going to be doing all kinds of different stuff.
Ever a time like, it's like, so I'm definitely on the fence of or on the side of the fence. So it's like, I loved it, and obviously as a comic reader. Just to give you a lot of praise, I loved the setup.
Please give me a lot of praise.
Here it comes. I love the setup of the saviors leading to that moment.
Oh, great.
I felt like that was one of those moments that would be harder to do in a comic and not have the same sense of dread that I got out of the television show. It's the hoot and holler of these 10 and then 15 and then 50.
Great.
It was great.
So, and I have to give props to Scott Gimple on that.
Yeah.
That's him being able to read the comic and sit back and say, okay, how do we heighten this moment? How do we intensify it? How do we set up the saviors a little better than Robert did? How do we make sure that there are more saviors that people care about than Robert set up? I mean, there's a lot of flaws if you get down to it in the work that I do. And I'm happy to have Scott Gimple coming in and, plugging those holes and beefing everything up. And it's a great process.
There's been a few new announcements as well that have come out.
Has there now?
There have been. Let's talk about 5-year
yes.
first. So 5 seasons of this, actually, I told my wife, I'm like, Robert's working on a K-drama. She's,
yes, I am.
watching the K-drama. It's just kind of gives me this look like, what? Where did this come from? So tell us a little bit about it. I talked to a few folks, and there's some people that know exactly about it. Some people who are like, oh, really? This is news to me.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's a project I've been developing for a really long time. I actually started it before the Walking Dead show ever started. And it's something that I've been really excited about, but it's an exploration of a normal, average family dealing with the impending end of the world. And so the asteroid's coming. We know the asteroid's coming. We know it's coming in 5 years. And we're going to see how civilization processes that and how they react to it and what it does to us as people. So the first season will have us behaving in a certain way. The second season will have us behaving in a certain way. And as that event gets closer and more real and more unavoidable, things will deteriorate in a very interesting and exciting and cool way. And what we found,
each season kind of represents a year. Then
and what we found is that is a really interesting idea to explore in other countries, because there are other cultures and different ways that people live and different ways that people would process that information and react and work together and not work together. And so the idea of doing it in another country and possibly doing it in other countries, including this one eventually, is really exciting to us. And seeing, the different ways that the entire planet would deal with this world-ending cataclysm.
So, don't believe everything you read on the internet, but I think I read somewhere that, you and Dave are actually fans of sort of the idea of Korean dramas, and is this?
Yes. Yeah, no, we love that process. We love the way they produce them. We love the way that it's, there's a lot of new ways that that stuff is released. That I think that the American model could kind of learn from, and it's really about Skybound as a company seeing the appeal of that and trying to immerse ourselves in it and see what we can learn from that process, because we know how we produce television and we're intrigued by the way they produce television, and we're trying to see if there are tricks and techniques that we can supply to them to maybe do a K-drama in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
And also things that we can pick up from them to apply on our shows here.
Well, I mean, some of the premises of the K-dramas my wife has told me about are like, I mean, this sounds totally normal to me. She's talking about like girls that fall in love with ghosts and, you know, like all sorts
What's
of...
weird about that, I ask?
There's not anything weird about it. It's just, you know, it seems like the K-dramas
Sound to me like
don't-
someone who's never met a ghost. I find it hard not to fall in love with a ghost.
All right.
You would think it's absurd.
I'll take your word for it then. And you're even looking at kind of a different distribution. So Viki, can you tell, I wasn't totally familiar, I had to read up a little bit on Viki, but they do this kind of programming that's streaming for everyone, right?
Not only do they do streaming for everyone, but they crowdsource their translations. So a lot of times it's this really great thing where the Viki shows will be accessible to people all around the world almost instantaneously because they have teams of basically fans that are huge into the shows but are very bilingual and know, you know, their language and other languages and are able to very quickly, you know, put that together. So it's kind of a crowdsourcing model in a way brought to television, which is really cool.
Were people surprised? Were the buzz, like, was it a surprise to folks when you guys announced it?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of cool stuff at Skybound, and we always are thinking outside the box and trying to do different, new, and exciting things. And so, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of calls from different people in the industry that are like, we want to know what's going on with this and tell us how it goes. And you know, there's a lot of excitement around it.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, so there's another announcement that came out recently, and that is revolving around the Chronicles of Amber.
Yes.
And
I can say nothing.
What?
It's all top secret, but go ahead.
Oh,
I'll do my best.
Well,
There's very little I can say.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting, even to me and some of the other fans I saw, is that you are either very intimate with this, or you know, this was new to me, right? I think I'd heard about it before, as like the reference to Game of Thrones, which many people had.
Right.
I've not read this source material yet, but instantly, like a lot of the fans were like, "Oh, I need to check that out. If these guys are doing it, there must be a great story there that I want to be told." But can you tell us, like, at least what drew you guys to this?
Well, it's just an amazing fantasy world with a lot of. There's a very intense character study, which is something that always appeals to us, but it's just an amazing world. You know, it starts out in Earth, but it very quickly starts going into these other dimensions, and each dimension has its own different appeal and its own different, you know, setting and things like that, and so there's a lot of variety in the kind of stories that we can tell with it. And there's just a tremendous amount of potential in it. It's you know, largely untapped, and so I think that it's a great opportunity for Skybound to branch out into you know, just a different kind of thing that we've done before. And David Alpert, you know, I don't want to misrepresent myself. You know, my producing partner, you know, is you know, worships these books.
Well,
so if anyone is worried about, you gotta really drill
okay.
deep with him. He is much more of an expert on it than I am. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, but he's the guy that's definitely going to be crossing the T's and dotting the I's on that.
Very cool, very cool. So we just have a couple more minutes, Robert, and I know you're super busy here at San Diego Comic-Con. Talk to me a little bit about, because I think 5 Year kind of represents this. It's like, okay, we have sort of an idea and that we want to go with, but is that one that you will actually get involved writing? Because I feel like you're also, you know, getting other creators involved with some of these ideas and having these larger collaborations.
No, the key of 5 Year, and the thing that makes me really excited about it, is that I've written a document about what that story is, but I am not as well versed in Korean culture as you may think. And we want it to be a 100% authentic K-drama with Korean writers, Korean cast, Korean story. It's based on my idea. It exists in the overall world that I've created, but it's that team that's going to be bringing that authentic Korean experience, which is great.
Is this like the first time you've done something like this? Is there anything else?
I think it's the first time I've done something like this in television. It's not that dissimilar to the way I work with Telltale, the way that, you know, they make an amazing Walking Dead game that in some respects completely outshines The Walking Dead in every other medium. I mean, I hear no end of people that are saying, no, the Telltale game. that's the real Walking Dead. The thing you do, that's dog shit. And I'm happy to hear that. Like, I love that people, love the different things that come out of the things that I do. But yeah, hopefully 5 year will be the same way.
Awesome. All right, we just got a couple minutes left, so I have to just say, the recent issues of The Walking Dead have been incredible, and out of respect, we won't spoil anything, but I got to watch my wife experience over the last couple weeks, not only the line being drawn by the Whisperers,
yes,
which was like amazing to see her like her, but then in this last issue, she actually turned to me and she said, I think that Negan is my favorite character of all time. And I was like, I can totally see why you say that, but I have to ask you, how fun has it been to write these last few issues?
It's been a lot of fun. I love Negan. He is the most interesting. I mean, a lot of times when you're writing, especially when you're working on a drama, and this happens in the Walking Dead writers' room all the time, we come up with the funny version or the stupid version or the weird version, and we're always talking like, I wish we could do like a Walking Dead comedy show, because there is an inherent funniness to some of the things that we do, and it's a serious show, and it would devalue it or go against its entire core to do these things. But when I'm writing dialogue, I sometimes come up with stupid, outlandish, but interesting things that I cannot use. And with Negan, I get to use them, and it is a lot of fun. And I love trying to top myself, like trying to come up with the weirdest, most uncomfortable, horrific, horrible, but also kind of funny things for him to say, and it's a delight. So I'm glad people are enjoying it.
You know what? There's one thing that might make me a little angry about the television show, and if that's, if I don't see Negan give the line of like,
yes,
is it weird that I have an erection right now? That is, absolutely.
We can definitely get away with that, so don't worry. That will happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of the F-bombs, you're gonna have to buy the you'll have to buy the Blu-rays for those.
Of course. Robert, it's been a pleasure. You've got a panel later today, the Walking Dead comic panel.
Yes, it is
Charlie.
at a time in the future.
I think it's 4:30.
Yes, 4:30.
Yeah.
It's gonna be. It's at the convention. Room 6AEF or something.
I just
DEF.
wanted to see if you knew.
Hosted by Jason Mantzoukas, though. Super excited about that.
Excellent.
I was shocked. I was like, hey, you want to host this panel? And he was like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that we just talk about the League the entire time and we don't talk about Walking Dead at all. But we'll see.
Awesome. Robert, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to sit up here and chat with you. We're going to have David Albert joining us here in just a moment.
He's the best. That guy's just
grill
great.
him, but big round of applause and thank you to Robert Kirkman. He's got a business San Diego Comic-Con, but we will continue things here on day one. Don't go away. We'll be right back.